Family banned me from wedding for being too ghetto. I sent bride her groom's DMs to me. But that's the end of the story. Let me tell you how it began. It started, as most family disasters do, with a phone call from my Aunt Carol. Her voice was syrupy sweet, the way it always was right before she delivered bad news. They banned me from my brother's wedding for being too ghetto, so I sent the bride her groom's DMs. But that's just the beginning. They didn't expect my revenge. Subscribe and like to see how it all unfolded. "Hannah, darling, how are you?" she asked, the sound crackling slightly over the line. I was fine, I told her. Just finishing up a design project. I was a freelance graphic artist working from my small but sunny apartment in a part of the city her side of the family probably only saw on the news. I could already feel the tension in her forced pleasantries. "That's wonderful, dear. Listen, I'm calling about the wedding," she said, her voice dropping into a conspiratorial whisper. "There's been a slight change of plans regarding the guest list." My stomach tightened. My brother Paul was getting married in less than a month to Megan, a woman whose family tree probably had its own zip code. I had already bought a dress, a simple but elegant navy blue one that I had saved for 3 months to afford. "What kind of change?" I asked, keeping my voice level. Aunt Carol sighed, a long, dramatic sound. "Well, honey, you know Megan's family is... well, they're very traditional, very particular. They're helping so much with the costs, you know, and they have an image to maintain." I stayed silent, letting her dig her own hole. I knew what was coming. I had felt it ever since I met Megan's parents at the engagement party. They had looked at my tattoos and my thrift store jacket like I was a piece of gum they'd found on their shoe. "It's just some of your style choices," Aunt Carol stammered, "and your apartment's location. It's all a bit loud. Megan is worried it might clash with the overall aesthetic of the event. Her mother used the word ghetto. The word hung in the air between us, ugly and sharp. Ghetto. Because I couldn't afford a doorman and my fire escape had plants on it. Because my laugh was too loud and my art was too colorful. I felt a cold fury rise in my chest, so potent it almost choked me. "So I'm uninvited?" I said, my voice flat. "It's not like that, darling," she insisted, though it was exactly like that. "It's just for the main ceremony and the reception. We'll have a small family get-together for you afterwards. Something more... casual. A consolation party. A separate, lesser celebration for the ghetto sister." I didn't say anything else. I just listened to her prattle on about understanding and family unity before I politely ended the call. I sank onto my couch, the one I had found on the curb, and reupholstered myself, and stared at the wall of my own art. My father, before he passed, always told me that character was built, not bought. He'd have hated what our family was becoming. The worst part wasn't Megan or her snobbish parents. It was Paul, my brother. We had been inseparable growing up. We'd built forts, shared secrets, and defended each other against the world. But since he'd met Megan, he had started to change. He traded his worn-out band t-shirts for cashmere sweaters. He started using words like leveraging assets and optics. He had been slowly drifting away, and now it seemed he had finally floated out of reach. My first instinct was to call him, to scream at him, to ask him how he could let this happen. But I knew it would be useless. He was completely under Megan's spell. Then, I remembered something. A few months ago, I had been scrolling deep into my message history with Paul, looking for an old photo of our dad. I had scrolled too far, back to a night about 6 months after he and Megan had gotten engaged. He had been drunk, texting me from the back of an Uber after some boring charity gala. I opened the old messages now, my hands shaking slightly. There they were, glowing on the screen. "This is so fake, hon," one message read. "Everyone is plastic. I miss just hanging out, eating pizza on the floor." Another one, a few minutes later. "Megan is talking to some senator about tax shelters. I think my soul just died." And then, the one that made my breath catch. The one I had saved without knowing why. Sometimes I think I made a huge mistake. I had brushed it off at the time as a drunken rant. I'd told him to sleep it off and that he was just nervous. But now, reading those words, they felt like a weapon. A truth he had tried to bury under a mountain of expensive wedding gifts and social climbing. I took screenshots of the entire conversation. I looked at the picture of my brother and me on my bookshelf, a goofy photo from a road trip we took years ago. That version of him was gone. The man marrying Megan was a stranger who thought his sister was a social liability. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Paul. Hey. Aunt Carol told me she spoke to you. Sorry about all this. It's complicated. We'll make it up to you. It wasn't an apology. It was a dismissal. A pat on the head. The text was so cold, so corporate. It sounded like Megan had written it herself. That was it. That was the moment the sadness turned into something harder, something sharper. They wanted to erase me from their perfect picture. They wanted me to quietly accept my place in the corner, out of sight. They thought I would just take the insult and fade away, but they had forgotten about the conversation my own brother had started. They forgot that in his moment of weakness, he had told me the truth. And I had the receipts. The wedding was in 3 weeks. That was more than enough time to decide how to deliver my gift to the bride. For the first hour, I just sat there, phone in my hand, rereading Paul's pathetic excuse for a text. It's complicated. We'll make it up to you. Each word was a tiny, sharp piece of glass working its way under my skin. The anger was so pure it felt like a chemical reaction, burning away the sadness and leaving something cold and hard in its place. I looked over at the photo on my bookshelf, the one of our dad standing in front of the car he spent a decade restoring. He was covered in grease but beaming with pride. My father always said, "A fancy frame can't fix a crooked picture." He was talking about the cheap frames our mom used to buy, but I knew he meant it about people too. Paul was trying so hard to fit into Megan's gold-plated frame, but the picture inside was cracked and miserable. My phone rang again. It was Aunt Carol. I almost ignored it, but a new, dangerous curiosity made me answer. "Hannah, dear, I'm so glad I caught you," she chirped, her voice even more saccharine than before. "I was just talking with Megan's mother, and we were thinking for your little get-together. We could have it at that cute little Italian place by the old mall. You like pasta, don't you? My little get-together. The ghetto family party." I imagined a checkered tablecloth and a candle stuck in a wine bottle while they were clinking champagne glasses in a grand ballroom. "That sounds lovely, Aunt Carol," I said, my voice smooth as silk. Let her think I was taking it well. Let them all think I was rolling over. "Wonderful. And don't you worry about a thing. You can wear whatever you like. No need to be formal," she added, as if she were granting me a great kindness. The condescension was breathtaking. She was telling me I could come to my pity party in my regular ghetto clothes. I ended the call and my hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from hurt. It was from adrenaline. They weren't just excluding me. They were managing me, packaging my humiliation into a neat, convenient pasta-filled event to clear their consciences. I needed to talk to someone who wasn't related to me, someone who still lived in the real world. I called my best friend Chloe and met her at our usual coffee shop downtown. The place was buzzing with students and artists, the exact kind of people Megan's family would probably call health code violations. I laid it all out for her. The phone call, the ghetto comment, Paul's text, and finally the screenshots glowing on my phone screen. Chloe stared at the messages, her eyes wide. "He said he made a huge mistake? About Megan?" She looked up at me, a slow, wicked grin spreading across her face. "Oh, Hannah, this isn't a problem. This is ammunition. This is a tactical nuke." "I know," I said, stirring my cold coffee. "But what do I do with it? Just send it to her?" "No," Chloe said, leaning forward. "That's amateur hour. If you send it now, they'll have a fight, he'll apologize, say he was drunk, and they'll get married anyway. You'll just be the crazy, jealous sister. You can't give them time to spin it." She was right. The delivery had to be flawless. The timing had to be perfect. It couldn't be a messy, emotional outburst. It had to be a quiet, elegant execution. "The morning of the wedding," Chloe whispered, her eyes gleaming. "While she's getting her hair and makeup done, when she's at peak bridezilla, surrounded by her bridesmaids, that's when the bomb drops." An idea started to form in my mind, sparked by Chloe's words. It was an artist's idea, a designer's idea. I wasn't just going to forward some ugly screenshots. That wasn't my style. My style was the very thing they hated, so I was going to use it. I was going to create something for them. A special wedding gift. They're so concerned with aesthetics, I said, a real smile touching my lips for the first time all day. The overall aesthetic of the event. I think I should give them something that fits right in. Chloe raised an eyebrow. What are you thinking? I'm a graphic artist, I replied. Their wedding website is all minimalist fonts and soft, blush pink tones. Their invitations probably cost more than my rent. They love a cohesive brand. I pulled up their wedding website on my phone. It was as bland and expensive as I'd imagined. Hashtag Paul and Megan's perfect union. It made me want to gag. I'm going to make Megan a little slideshow, I said. A trip down memory lane. It'll start with pictures of her and Paul, all sweet and romantic. It will match their color palette perfectly. And then, for the grand finale, Chloe's jaw dropped. You're going to design the takedown. You're going to make the receipts look pretty. I'm going to make them a work of art, I corrected her. I would send it directly to Megan's phone on her wedding day. Not from my number, of course. I'd use an anonymous email service. The subject line would be simple. A gift for the bride. She wouldn't be able to resist opening it. It would be the last thing she saw before she put on her veil. Paul's own words, his own doubts, packaged in the very aesthetic she cared about so much. It was poetic. It was perfect. That night, I went home and opened my laptop. I pulled up my most sophisticated design software. I downloaded their official wedding font. The first slide was a beautiful, soft focus photo of Paul and Megan with the words, "Your love story," written in elegant script. The fury in my chest had finally found a channel. It was time to get to work. The next 2 weeks were a strange mix of artistic focus and cold, simmering rage. I worked on the slideshow with the same dedication I gave my highest-paying clients. I chose a soft, romantic instrumental track, the kind you hear in jewelry commercials, to play in the background. The color palette was a delicate blend of ivory, rose gold, and a muted sage green, exactly like the one on their wedding invitation. The first few slides were a masterpiece of curated happiness. There was Paul proposing on one knee, Megan showing off the ring, the two of them laughing on a sailboat. I used elegant transitions where photos would gently fade into one another. It was beautiful. It was tasteful. It was a lie. Then, at the 1-minute mark, the music would fade to silence. The screen would turn a stark, minimalist white. And then, in their custom calligraphy font, Paul's words would appear, one message at a time. This is so fake, Han. Everyone is plastic. I think my soul just died. Each message lingered on the screen for 5 seconds before being replaced by the next. The final slide was the most devastating. Sometimes I think I made a huge mistake. After that, the screen would fade to black. The video was exactly 1 minute and 20 seconds long. A perfect, bite-sized piece of content for a bride to watch on her big day. I felt like a munitions expert building a bomb, admiring my own craftsmanship while knowing the destruction it would cause. As I looked at the finished product, my dad's voice echoed in my head. He'd been right. A fancy frame can't fix a crooked picture. I had just built the fanciest digital frame imaginable around the crookedest picture of them all. One evening, about a week before the wedding, my phone rang. It was Paul. My heart hammered against my ribs. I hadn't spoken to him since that pathetic text message. I let it ring 3 times before answering, wanting him to think I was busy, that my world didn't revolve around his wedding drama. "Hey," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "Hey, hon." He sounded tired. "Look, I know things are awkward." Awkward was an interesting word for being called ghetto and disowned from the most important day of his life. "I wanted to talk about that," he continued, and I could hear the rustle of papers in the background, like he was in an office, squeezing this call in between meetings. Megan and I feel terrible about how this was handled. It was a communication breakdown. A communication breakdown. He sounded like a PR manager apologizing for a corporate scandal. "We were thinking," he said, and I knew the "we" really meant Megan. "We'd like to make a gesture, to show you there are no hard feelings. We'd like to pay your rent for the next 6 months." I was so stunned I couldn't speak. It wasn't an apology, it was a transaction. They were trying to buy my silence, to pay me off for my humiliation. They thought my dignity had a price tag, And that price was 6 months in my ghetto apartment. So you can get back on your feet, he added, as if I were some charity case he was benevolently saving. The cold fury I'd been nursing for weeks crystallized into a diamond-hard certainty. Any lingering shred of doubt, any whisper in the back of my mind that maybe I was going too far, vanished. "Paul," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "do you remember when Dad died?" The question threw him off. "What? Yeah, of course. What does that have to do with anything?" "Do you remember what you said to me at the funeral, standing by his grave?" I pressed. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I knew he didn't remember. He'd been a mess, but I remembered every word. "You told me it was just us now," I said softly. "You and me against the world. That we'd always have each other's backs, no matter what." I heard him take a shaky breath. For a second, a tiny fraction of a second, I thought I heard my brother in that sound. The real one. But then the moment passed. "Hannah, that was a long time ago. We were kids. Things change." "Yes," I said. "They do." "So, about the rent," he said, trying to get back on his corporate script. "We can have my assistant wire the first payment tomorrow. We just need you to agree not to, make a scene. Don't make a scene." That's what this was about. They weren't worried about my feelings. They were worried about their image. They were terrified I'd show up drunk and start yelling. They had no idea my plan was so much quieter and so much more devastating. "Don't worry, Paul," I said, and a slow, cold smile spread across my face. "I won't make a scene. You have my word." "Great, that's great," he said, relieved. "I'll have my assistant send over the details." I hung up without saying goodbye. I looked at my laptop, where the video file was saved to my desktop. Its name was simple: The Perfect Union. My brother had made his choice. He had chosen the cashmere sweaters and the tax shelters and the woman who thought his sister was trash. He had chosen the fancy frame. He just didn't realize how crooked the picture inside really was. And I was going to be the one to show it to them. All of them. The week leading up to the wedding felt like living underwater. Time moved slowly, sounds were muffled, and I felt a strange, detached pressure all around me. I put the finishing touches on my video, tweaking the timing of the text reveals by milliseconds, ensuring the final message landed with the force of a physical blow. I exported the file, a sleek 120-megabyte package of destruction, and uploaded it to a secure cloud server. The wire transfer from Paul's assistant had arrived as promised, a silent, insulting sum of money that I immediately moved into a savings account I labeled Escape Fund. It wasn't hush money, it was fuel. 3 days before the wedding, I saw a post on Megan's Instagram. It was a professional photo of her, Paul, my Aunt Carol, and Megan's parents, all dressed in tasteful shades of cream and beige, laughing in a sun-drenched garden. The caption read, "So blessed to be joining this incredible family. Family is the anchor that holds us through life's storms. Paul and Megan's perfect union." My name was nowhere. My face was absent. I was the storm they were being held through, erased from the official family portrait before the ink on the marriage license was even dry. I saved the image. With a few clicks in my design software, I made it the new opening slide of my video, right before the photo of Paul proposing. The hypocrisy was too perfect not to include. It set the stage beautifully. Their definition of family, followed by the truth. I remembered watching my dad work on his old car, meticulously cleaning each part before putting it back. He used to say, "A fancy frame can't fix a crooked picture." He meant you couldn't just paint over rust and expect it to hold. You had to deal with the rot underneath. As I watched the final version of the slideshow with its elegant fonts and soft music playing over words of betrayal, I understood his point more than ever. Megan and Paul had built the most expensive, polished frame imaginable, but the picture inside was rotten to the core. My video wasn't destroying anything that wasn't already broken. It was just showing them the rust. The next step was creating the delivery system. I used a VPN, routing my connection through 3 different countries before signing up for a hyper-secure, anonymous email service. The kind journalists use. I created an address that was a random string of letters and numbers. No connection to me whatsoever. I composed the email. The subject line was simple, just as I'd planned. A gift for the bride. The body of the email was even simpler. It contained only a link to the video with one line of text beneath it in their wedding font. Every love story has a beginning. I checked Megan's online wedding itinerary, which she had so thoughtfully shared with her hundreds of closest friends. Hair and makeup were scheduled to begin at 9 a.m. I wanted my gift to arrive after she was settled in her chair, a mimosa in one hand, her phone in the other, feeling like the queen of her own universe. I scheduled the email to be sent at exactly 9:17 a.m. A time specific enough to feel random, but chosen with surgical precision. With everything set, a strange calm washed over me. There were no more decisions to make. The missile was programmed and the launch sequence was initiated. All I had to do was wait. Chloe called me that night, the eve of the wedding. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice laced with a mix of concern and gleeful anticipation. "You're not having second thoughts, are you?" "No," I said, looking around my small apartment, at the vibrant art on the walls, at the comfortable clutter of my real life. "I'm not. This was never just about me being uninvited, Chloe. It's about them trying to make me feel ashamed of who I am, of where I come from, of our dad. They want me to be invisible, and I won't be." "Good," she said, "because you're my hero. Call me the second you hear the explosion." We hung up and I turned off my phone. I didn't want to see any last-minute texts from Aunt Carol about the pasta party, or from Paul asking if the money came through. I wanted silence. The wedding was taking place at a lavish country estate 2 hours away. I was not there. I was in my apartment in the part of the city they despised. I made myself a cup of tea and sat on my fire escape, looking out at the city lights. The sounds of sirens, music, and distant arguments filled the air. It was loud. It was messy. It was real. It was my life, the one I had built for myself. And for the first time in weeks, I felt no anger, just a quiet, humming sense of certainty. The sun would rise in a few hours. It was going to be a beautiful day for a wedding. I woke up before my alarm on the morning of the wedding. The sun was already streaming through my window, casting long, golden rectangles on my wooden floor. It was a perfect, painfully beautiful day, the kind of day wedding planners dream of. From my apartment, I could hear the city coming to life, the distant rumble of a train, the rhythmic hiss of a street sweeper, someone shouting good-naturedly from a window across the way. This was my world, the one my Aunt Carol described with a polite shudder, the one they paid me to stay in. I made myself a cup of tea, the strong black kind my dad used to drink, and sat at my small kitchen table. My laptop was open. I didn't need to check it. I knew the program was running. I knew the email was queued. My finger traced the rim of the warm mug. 7:30 a.m. Right now, Megan would be waking up in a suite at the estate that probably cost more per night than my monthly rent. She'd be stretching in a 4-poster bed, surrounded by silk pillows. Her bridesmaids, a flock of women with identical highlights and expensive yoga pants, would be arriving with champagne. They'd toast to her perfect union. I could picture it so clearly. The flurry of activity, the scent of hairspray and mimosas, the forced laughter. And somewhere in a separate wing of the estate, my brother Paul would be getting dressed. He'd be fumbling with cufflinks, his face pale with either nerves or a hangover. Would he think of me? Would a single thought of his ghetto sister cross his mind as he tied the silk knot of his tie? Probably not. He was an expert at compartmentalizing. He had boxed me up and put me away on a dusty shelf labeled "Family Obligations. Handle later." The clock on my laptop ticked over to 8:45 a.m. Hair and makeup would be in full swing. Megan would be in a plush white robe, her face tilted up towards a makeup artist wielding a $1,000 brush. She'd be scrolling through her phone, basking in the glow of pre-wedding congratulations from her 500 closest friends. She'd feel untouchable. A queen. I closed my eyes and remembered a different morning. I was 10, Paul was 14. We were at our grandparents' lake house. Dad had taken us fishing at dawn, and we'd caught nothing but a cold. We came back to the cabin shivering, and Paul made us hot chocolate on the stove, burning it slightly. We sat on the porch, wrapped in old quilts that smelled like mothballs and wood smoke, sipping the lumpy, too-sweet cocoa. He put his arm around my shoulders. "It's us against the world, Han," he'd whispered, his breath making a small cloud in the cold air. It was his favorite thing to say back then. It was our motto. Where was that boy? When did he get replaced by this man who outsourced his apologies to an assistant and offered hush money instead of a hug? The money sat in my account, untouched. It felt dirty, like evidence from a crime scene. It was the price of my silence, my dignity, my history. It was the value they had placed on our childhood memories. 9:15 am, 2 minutes to go. My heart wasn't racing, my hands weren't shaking. I just felt a profound and heavy sense of clarity. I wasn't an angry little sister throwing a tantrum. I was a designer, an artist, and I had created a piece of work that told the truth. My dad's voice was in my head again. A fancy frame can't fix a crooked picture. They had built a frame of gold and ivory, of string quartets and ice sculptures. I was just about to show everyone how crooked the picture inside was. At 9:17 a.m., nothing happened in my apartment. No alarms went off. No confetti fell from the ceiling. My laptop screen remained unchanged, but somewhere miles away, a notification would have silently appeared on Megan's phone. An email with the subject line, "A gift for the bride." She'd be curious. She'd think it was from a guest who couldn't make it, sending a digital gift card. She would tap it open. I imagined the scene. The makeup artist pausing her brush, the bridesmaids quieting their chatter, Megan's perfectly manicured finger tapping the link. The first photo would appear, the one she posted just days ago, of her incredible new family, without me in it. Then the photo of Paul proposing. The gentle, romantic music would start. She'd smile, maybe a little teary-eyed, and then the screen would turn white, and the words would appear. His words. "This is so fake, hon." I took a slow sip of my tea. It had gone cold. I stayed there for another hour, just sitting in the quiet of my apartment. I didn't check social media. I didn't turn on the news. The bomb had been deployed. Now, there was only the fallout. At 10:30 a.m., I decided I couldn't just sit there anymore. I walked over to my phone, which was still off, lying on the counter. I picked it up, my thumb hovering over the power button. I knew what would happen the moment I turned it on. A flood of notifications. Chaos, but it had to be done. I pressed the button and held it. The screen flickered to life. It took a moment to connect to the network. And then it began. It didn't just buzz. It vibrated with such intensity it felt like it was going to leap out of my hand. Before I could even look at the dozens of missed calls and texts, it started ringing. It was a number I didn't recognize. A deep, cold certainty settled in my stomach. The explosion had happened, and I was about to hear the first screams. I took a breath and answered, putting the phone on speaker. I wanted to hear it with both ears. I wanted the sound to fill my small kitchen. For a second, there was only a choked, ragged sound, like someone trying to breathe through a handful of gravel. Then the scream came. "You little monster!" It was my Aunt Carol. Her voice, once so syrupy and condescending, was now a shrill, cracking shriek that was probably shattering champagne flutes 2 hours away. "You vile, jealous little ghetto monster! You have ruined everything! Everything!" In the background, I could hear chaos. Women sobbing, someone shouting, "Get her out of here!" The distinct sound of a door slamming. It was a symphony of destruction, and Aunt Carol was my conductor. "I don't know what you're talking about, Aunt Carol," I said, my voice as calm and smooth as a flat lake. I picked a piece of lint off my sweater. The sheer normalcy of my tone seemed to break her. "Don't you dare play innocent with me," she screeched. "Megan, oh God, Megan, her makeup is ruined. She's locked herself in the bathroom. She threw the ring at Paul. The ring. Do you know how much that cost?" I almost smiled. It was so perfectly them. In the middle of a complete emotional meltdown, her first thought was the monetary value of the ring. "That sounds stressful," I said politely. "Are you sure you should be yelling? It's not good for your blood pressure." "I will end you, Hannah," she hissed, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You will never work in this city again. You will never be welcome in this family again. You are dead to us. You hear me? Dead!" Aunt Carol, I said, my voice still quiet. You already made that clear when you paid me to disappear. You just didn't like the price of my goodbye gift. Have a wonderful wedding day. I hung up before she could scream again. My hand was perfectly steady as I placed the phone back on the counter. It lay there for exactly 3 seconds before it started vibrating again, ringing with a frantic urgency. It was Paul. I answered. Han? Han? What did you do? His voice was a panicked mess, high-pitched and breathless. He sounded like the 14-year-old boy who burned the hot chocolate, not the man who had sent his assistant to deliver an insult wrapped in cash. I sent Megan a wedding present, I said simply. A collection of your love letters. I thought it was romantic. Romantic? She's destroyed the bridal suite. She smashed a mirror. Her mother is threatening to sue me for emotional distress. He was pacing. I could hear his expensive leather shoes squeaking on some polished floor. You have to call her, Han. You have to tell her it's a prank. A stupid, twisted joke. Tell her you made it all up because you were angry. I felt a cold wave of something that wasn't anger, but a deep, profound disappointment. After everything, he still didn't get it. He still thought this was about a party I didn't get to attend. Why should I do that, Paul? I asked. Because we're family, he shouted, his voice cracking. The words hung in the air between us. Family. He was using that word now. No, Paul, I said, and my voice was hard now, like stone. Family doesn't call one of their own too ghetto. Family doesn't offer hush money to make a problem go away. Family doesn't try to erase a person because their life doesn't fit into a perfect manicured photo album. You and Aunt Carol and your new perfect in-laws decided what family meant, and I wasn't it. He stammered. I didn't mean it like that. You sent your assistant, Paul. You outsourced your own cruelty. You paid me $2,000 to be ashamed of myself, to be ashamed of the life Dad gave us. Well, I'm not ashamed. I'm just done. Please, Han. He was begging now, his voice small. She won't come out of the bathroom. The guests are arriving. What do I do? I thought of my dad's old saying, the one he used whenever he saw someone trying to cover up a problem with a fancy excuse. A fancy frame can't fix a crooked picture, Paul. What does that even mean? He sobbed in frustration. It means your wedding is a lie, I said softly, and everyone is about to see it. Goodbye, brother. I ended the call. This time, the silence in my apartment felt different. It wasn't empty. It was full of a quiet, terrible justice. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Chloe. It just said, I heard a boom all the way over here. Tell me everything. I smiled, a real smile this time. I was about to type back when the phone began to ring again. It was my grandmother, the matriarch, the one person I thought might have stood up for me. I stared at her name on the screen. The storm had reached the highest levels of power, and I knew this was just the beginning. I let it ring 3 times, each shrill burst echoing in the now silent apartment. My heart, which had been so steady during the calls with Aunt Carol and Paul, was now a frantic drum against my ribs. This was different. This was my grandmother, Mildred. She was the unshakable center of our family's universe, the keeper of stories and secrets, the one whose approval was the currency we all traded in. Her silence on the matter had been a heavy, unspoken question mark. Now, I was about to get the answer. I finally swiped to accept the call, my throat suddenly dry. I didn't put her on speaker. This was a conversation for me alone. Hello, grandmother, I said, my voice softer than I intended. There was a long pause on the other end, filled only with a faint static hiss. I could picture her perfectly, sitting in a high-backed chair in her perfectly preserved living room, the one with the plastic covers still on the lampshades, her back ramrod straight, the phone held delicately to her ear. She was not in the chaotic bridal suite. She was above the fray. She always was. My aunt called Megan's family traditional and used the word ghetto to describe me. What would you do if your family treated you like this? Comment what you think and share this story. Hannah, she finally said. Her voice was not a shriek like Aunt Carol's or a panicked whine like Paul's. It was low, cold, and utterly devoid of warmth. It was the voice she used when a business deal went sour, or when she was telling a gardener he had planted the roses in the wrong soil. It was a voice of finality. "What have you done?" It wasn't a question looking for an answer. It was an accusation. I was uninvited from my own brother's wedding, treated like a dirty secret, and then paid to stay away, I said, trying to keep my voice even. So I sent a gift that told the truth. The truth? She repeated the words as if they were a foreign concept. You think the truth is something you display on a screen for 500 people to gawk at? The truth, Hannah, is a private matter. Family matters are handled within the family. You took a private disagreement and you turned it into a public spectacle. You have shamed us. The word shamed landed like a physical blow. Not you hurt Megan or you upset Paul. You shamed us. The collective, the name, the carefully constructed image. They were ashamed of me first, I whispered, the words catching in my throat. They were ashamed of Dad's side of the family. They called me ghetto and tried to erase me from their perfect picture. Your father was a good man, but he was sentimental, Mildred said, a hint of ancient disapproval in her tone. He never understood the importance of appearances. You are his daughter in that, I see. This family has spent 2 generations building a reputation, a legacy. Your Aunt Carol and your brother were trying to protect that. Their methods may have been clumsy, but their intentions were sound. You, with your art and your emotions, you have taken a sledgehammer to it in a single morning. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was defending them. She was justifying the cruelty, the payment, the insult. She was framing it as a necessary business decision. So I was a bad investment, I said, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. A liability to the family brand. Do not be flippant with me, Hannah. Her voice sharpened like a knife. You knew exactly what you were doing. You waited. You planned. This was not an emotional outburst. This was a calculated attack. You wanted to burn everything down, and you have succeeded. The wedding is canceled. Megan's family is talking about lawsuits. Your brother is a laughingstock. Is this the justice you wanted? I thought of Paul's panicked, selfish voice. I thought of Aunt Carol screaming about the cost of a ring. They weren't victims. They were architects of their own disaster. A fancy frame can't fix a crooked picture, I said, my voice growing stronger as I repeated the words my dad had said to me, the words I had thrown at Paul. There was another long silence. I had a feeling my grandmother knew that saying, knew my dad used to say it. When she spoke again, her voice was glacial. That frame, as you call it, has paid for your education. It has kept a roof over your head for most of your life. You were happy enough to live inside it until it no longer suited you. You have made your choice. You have chosen your father's sentimentality over this family's stability. I chose dignity, I retorted. Something you can't buy. Dignity is a luxury, Hannah. Loyalty is a necessity, she said. Your access to the family trust is suspended, effective immediately. I will be speaking with the lawyers tomorrow to make it permanent. You are on your own. Do not call this number again. Do not contact your brother. You are no longer a part of this family's future. No, click. The line went dead. I held the phone to my ear for a full minute listening to the dial tone. It was done. This was the real explosion. The calls from Carol and Paul were just the aftershocks. My grandmother had just detonated the final bomb, severing me from my past and my future in one clean, cold cut. I slowly lowered the phone and placed it on the table. It was finally, truly, silent. I felt strangely calm. I had lost everything I thought was mine by birthright. But I had my name, my art, and $2,000 of their dirty money sitting in my bank account. It wasn't hush money anymore. It was a severance package, and I had a feeling I was going to put it to very good use. For the first 10 minutes, I just sat there, staring at the blank wall opposite my couch. The silence in my apartment was absolute. It wasn't the peaceful quiet of a Sunday morning. It was the heavy, pressurized silence of a vacuum. Something had been violently sucked out of the room, out of my life, and the space it left behind was unnervingly empty. I looked around my small living room. The secondhand armchair I'd reupholstered myself, the colorful abstract prints on the wall, my own work, the stack of art history books on the coffee table. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't a legacy, but it was mine. Every piece of it was chosen and paid for by me, Hannah. I picked up my laptop, my fingers moving automatically. I logged into my bank account. There it was, a balance of $2,147.58 and a recent deposit 2 days old for exactly $2,000. The severance package. My grandmother's words echoed in my head. You are on your own. For a moment, panic tried to claw its way up my throat. This tiny amount was all that stood between me and total failure. This was supposed to be my cushion, my emergency fund. But then another thought, clearer and stronger, pushed the panic down. This wasn't an emergency fund. It was seed money. My freelance business was just that, freelance. I took jobs as they came, working on an aging laptop that sounded like a jet engine when I had too many programs open. My website was a basic template I'd thrown together in a day. It was functional, but it didn't scream professional. It whispered talented, but broke. My family had always seen my art as a cute hobby, a sentimentality inherited from my father. They never saw it as a business, a career. Because to them, value was inherited, not created. I opened a new document and started typing, a business plan. It felt absurd, sitting in my tiny apartment with $2,000 to my name, planning an empire. But I wrote it all down. New equipment, a high-performance computer and a professional-grade graphics tablet. Marketing, a professionally designed website and a targeted social media ad campaign. Branding, a real logo. Business cards, a mission statement. I listed the costs next to each item. The total came to just over $1,900. It was almost exactly the amount they had paid me to disappear. I leaned back, looking at the prints on my wall. One was a chaotic splash of bright colors, pinks, yellows, electric blues, barely contained by a simple, thin black frame. My dad had helped me hang it. I remembered him stepping back to admire it. See, he'd said, his voice warm with that quiet pride he always had for my work. A fancy frame can't fix a crooked picture, but the right frame can make a great picture sing. I had thrown his words back at Paul as an insult, but now I understood them differently. My family was the fancy frame, obsessed with its own gilded exterior. But the picture inside, their values, their cruelty, their transactional love, was crooked and ugly. I had spent my life trying to fit into their frame, contorting myself to match its shape. Now I was free to be my own picture, and I would build my own frame. My plan needed more than just money. It needed expertise. I spent the next 2 days buried in research. I looked up small business grants for artists, online marketing courses, and local networking groups. That's when I found her. Her name was Evelyn. She was a designer who had started her own branding agency 20 years ago from her kitchen table. Her website featured a blog, and one post was titled The $1,000 Startup. It was a step-by-step guide on how to launch a creative business with minimal capital. It was practical, sharp, and deeply inspiring. At the bottom of the page, it said she offered one-on-one coaching sessions for new entrepreneurs. The price for a 1-hour introductory session was $150. My hand trembled a little as I clicked the Book Now button. This was real. I was spending their hush money on my future. As I filled out the form, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a news alert from a local society blog. The headline made my stomach clench. Wedding bells silenced. Tech heir Paul and socialite Meghan call off lavish ceremony amidst family scandal. I clicked on it, my curiosity a morbid, unstoppable force. The article was vague, citing irreconcilable differences, but it was filled with pictures of Paul and Meghan from their engagement party. They looked perfect, happy, rich. Then I scrolled down to the comments section. It was a dumpster fire. Anonymous users were speculating wildly. I heard he cheated on her with someone from his past. Another wrote, "Someone told me his family is a nightmare. They have a black sheep sister they try to hide." My cheeks burned. They were talking about me. I was a faceless, nameless scandal. I was the ghetto sister, the liability to the family brand, just as my grandmother said. I felt the old shame rising. the familiar feeling of being the odd one out, the disappointment. But then I looked back at my laptop screen, at the booking form for my session with Evelyn. I was about to invest in myself. I was about to build something that was entirely mine, on my own terms. They had tried to erase me, to pay me off and hide me away like a dirty secret, but they had failed. They had just given me the fuel I needed to start my own fire. I closed the news article, took a deep breath, and finished typing my message to Evelyn. "My name is Hannah," I wrote, "and I'm ready to build something new." The video call connected, and a woman with sharp, intelligent eyes and a sleek silver bob appeared on my screen. This was Evelyn. She wasn't smiling, but her expression was one of intense focus. She looked directly into the camera as if she were looking right through me. "Hannah," she said, her voice crisp and clear. "You sent me your portfolio. I've looked at it 3 times. My heart hammered against my ribs. I suddenly felt like a fraud, like a little girl playing dress-up in the business world. My old website, with its clumsy layout and low-res images, felt like a pathetic cry for help. "It's a work in progress," I stammered. "It's a mess," she corrected, but without cruelty. It was a statement of fact. "The layout is amateur, the branding is non-existent, but the work itself is exceptional. It's vibrant. It has a point of view. It's buried under a pile of garbage, but it's gold." I didn't know whether to feel insulted or praised. I just nodded, my throat tight. "You have a strong, raw voice in your designs," Evelyn continued, clicking through the files on her end. "This piece here, for the local music festival, it's chaotic but controlled. It feels like the city. Why is your brand Hannah Designs? It's the most boring, generic name you could have chosen. It tells me nothing." "I didn't know what else to call it," I admitted quietly. "Your family called you ghetto," she said, reading from the notes I had sent her. "They used it as an insult. You should use it as a weapon. Your work comes from your experience, from the part of the city they're afraid of. That's not a weakness, Hannah. That's your brand identity. It's authentic." She leaned forward, her eyes pinning me in place. "Right now, your talent is a brilliant picture stuck in a cheap, crooked frame. It makes the whole thing look bad." The words hit me like a physical blow. "A fancy frame can't fix a crooked picture," my dad used to say, "but the right frame can make a great picture sing." I had spent my whole life being told I was the crooked part of my family's perfect gilded frame. Now Evelyn was telling me my frame was the problem, not my art. "My father used to say that," I whispered, the memory feeling suddenly sharp and clear. Evelyn's expression softened just a fraction. "Your father was a smart man. So let's build you a new frame, a better one." For the next hour, she was a whirlwind of practical advice. We brainstormed new names for my business, focusing on words that felt authentic to my style. We outlined a new website structure. She gave me a list of software to invest in and marketing strategies that cost time, not money. I furiously typed notes, my mind buzzing. She wasn't just giving me a business plan. She was giving me a blueprint for a new identity. When the call ended, I didn't hesitate. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I opened my banking app. The $2,000 was still there. My hush money, my severance package. I navigated to an electronics website and found the computer Evelyn recommended, a powerhouse with a graphics card that could handle anything I threw at it. I added the professional drawing tablet to my cart. The total came to $1,287.99. My finger hovered over the Confirm Purchase button. This was it. Every penny my grandmother had given me to disappear was about to be spent on becoming more visible than ever. It was an act of defiance. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and clicked. A confirmation email appeared in my inbox almost instantly. My new tools would arrive in 2 days. I felt a wave of dizziness, a mix of terror and exhilaration. I had just bet my entire safety net on myself. I walked to my small kitchen and poured a glass of water, my hand shaking slightly. As I stood there, my phone buzzed again. It was an email. The subject line read, "Introduction from Evelyn." My breath caught. I opened it. "Hannah," the email began, I was so impressed by our conversation today that I took the liberty of mentioning you to a colleague. His name is Eric, and he's the founder of a new audio tech startup. They're looking for a branding package. Logo, style guide, the whole works. They want something bold, modern, and with an urban edge. Sound familiar? He's seen your portfolio and wants to talk. I told him you were building a new brand for yourself, and he was excited to be one of your first clients under the new name. Don't let me down. Best, Evelyn. I read the email 3 times. A real client, a tech startup, someone who wanted my style, the very thing my family rejected. This wasn't just a plan anymore. It was happening. I looked around my apartment, at the art on my walls, at the city lights twinkling outside my window. My grandmother had tried to push me into the shadows, but she had miscalculated. She didn't realize that some things grow best in the dark, gathering strength, just waiting for a single spark to set them ablaze. And she had just handed me the match. The next 2 days were a blur of nervous energy. The boxes arrived on a Tuesday morning, big and brown and full of promise. I spent an hour just setting up the new computer, my hands tracing the sleek lines of the monitor. It was like touching a piece of a future I hadn't allowed myself to imagine. When I plugged in the drawing tablet and the pen glided across the surface for the first time, smooth as ice, I almost cried. It was real. I dove into the project for Eric's company, Sonus. He wanted a brand that felt like the city, gritty, alive, and unapologetic. For the first time, I didn't try to sand down my edges or use the clean, corporate-friendly fonts my Aunt Carol always praised. I let the raw energy of my neighborhood flow through my work. I used sharp angles inspired by graffiti tags, a color palette drawn from a sunset reflecting off a skyscraper, and a bold, custom typeface that felt like it had a voice of its own. I worked for 72 hours straight, fueled by cheap coffee and the sheer thrill of creation. I sent the first draft of the logo to Eric with a knot in my stomach. It was the most me I had ever been in my professional life. If he hated it, it would feel like a rejection of my very soul. His reply came in under 5 minutes. Hannah, this is it. This is exactly what I had in my head but couldn't describe. It's perfect. Send me the invoice for the full branding package. We want everything. I stared at the screen, reading the words over and over. I called Evelyn, my voice shaking. He liked it. Of course he did, she said, her tone matter of fact. Talent is undeniable, Hannah. You just needed the right frame. I sent Eric the invoice for $5,000, my hand trembling as I typed the number. It was more than I'd made in the last 3 months combined. The payment notification hit my bank account an hour later. I just sat there, looking at the balance on my phone. I had taken my grandmother's hush money, the money meant to make me small and silent, and I had turned it into a weapon for my own success. That weekend, I launched my new website, my new brand. I didn't call it Hannah Designs anymore. I called it Crooked Frame Studios. It was a private joke, a nod to my father, and a middle finger to my family. My portfolio was filled with the Sonus project and other personal work I'd always been too scared to show. I met my friend Zoe for a celebratory dinner at a small Italian place we both loved. She was scrolling through my new site on her phone, her eyes wide. Han, this is incredible, Zoe said, shaking her head in awe. It's so... powerful. I felt a warm glow spread through my chest. Thanks. It feels right, you know? It more than feels right. It's professional. It's edgy, she said, then her expression shifted slightly. She hesitated, chewing on her lip. Speaking of things that are definitely not edgy, I saw your cousin posted the link to your brother's wedding website. My smile froze. Oh? Yeah, I guess it's public. For the RSVPs and stuff, she said, sensing my change in mood. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have brought it up. No, it's fine, I said, my voice tight. I'm a big girl. But my curiosity was a painful itch. Later that night, after I got home, I typed the names Paul and Megan into a search engine. Their wedding website popped up immediately. It was a monstrosity of beige and gold. There were professionally shot engagement photos of them laughing in a field of wildflowers, looking like the stars of a pharmaceutical commercial. there was a section titled Our Story, which was a sanitized fairy tale that conveniently left out how Paul had spent 6 months of their magical journey, sending me desperate late-night messages. But it was the guest photo gallery that made my blood run cold. Guests could upload their own photos from pre-wedding events. Someone had posted a picture from the bridal shower. It was my Aunt Carol, my grandmother, and my cousin Chloe, all surrounding a beaming Megan. They were holding up champagne glasses, their faces glowing with smug satisfaction. The caption posted by Chloe read, "Celebrating the beautiful bride-to-be, so happy to be surrounded by our real loving family. No drama, just joy." Real family. The words were a targeted strike, and they hit their mark. All the success, the confidence I had built over the past few weeks, crumbled in an instant. They hadn't just excluded me. They were erasing me. They were rewriting history to make themselves the heroes and me the villain who was rightfully cast out. I closed the laptop, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. I walked over to my old computer, the one with the cracked screen, and powered it on. I navigated to a folder buried deep in the hard drive labeled Insurance. Inside were the screenshots. Dozens of them. Messages from Paul, sent just 4 months ago. "I think I'm making a mistake, Han. Megan wants a life I don't know if I can give her. Sometimes I wish I could just run away with you. Don't tell anyone I'm telling you this. She'd kill me." I looked at his words, at the dates, at the pathetic desperation. My family wanted a perfect story. They wanted a gilded frame around a picture of lies. I thought about my dad's words again. A fancy frame can't fix a crooked picture. They had built the fanciest frame imaginable. And I was about to show everyone just how crooked the picture inside really was. The wedding was in 1 week. I wasn't going to just send the messages to Megan. That was too simple. This required a performance. It needed to happen at the perfect moment, in the most public way possible. And I knew exactly how I was going to do it. The week before the wedding was the calmest I'd been in months. The rage had cooled into something solid and sharp, like a shard of ice in my gut. I worked on my design projects during the day, met my deadlines, and paid my bills. At night, I worked on my own project. I called it the reception package. I used my professional design software, the one I paid a hefty subscription for every month. I created a presentation using the same tacky beige and gold color scheme from their wedding website. The font was an elegant script, the kind used for expensive invitations. The first slide was a beautiful, high-resolution photo of Paul and Megan from their engagement shoot. They were smiling, bathed in golden light. Underneath, in that same elegant script, was the title, Our Story, The Parts You Didn't See. I took each of Paul's messages and placed them on their own slide. I didn't just paste the screenshots, I framed them. I highlighted the timestamps, showing they were sent late at night, often just hours after he'd posted a gushing photo with Megan on social media. "I think I'm making a mistake, Han," appeared over a backdrop of their clasped hands. "Megan wants a life I don't know if I can give her," was superimposed over a picture of them toasting with champagne. I was meticulous. I was an artist. This was my masterpiece. The final slide was the photo Chloe had posted from the bridal shower. My Aunt Carol, my grandmother, all of them, beaming around Megan. I put Chloe's caption at the bottom. "So happy to be surrounded by our real loving family. No drama, just joy." Then, above the photo, in large, bold letters, I added my own caption. "Is this what you call no drama?" I saved the file onto a small, sleek black USB drive. The performance was ready. Now, I just needed to get it on stage. I spent 2 days researching the wedding venue, the Grand Oak Country Club. I found their list of preferred vendors. The DJ was a guy named Scott. His website was flashy and had a contact us form for music requests. I knew they would have a slideshow. Weddings like this always had a cringy slideshow of baby pictures. Mine was just an addendum. On the day of the wedding, I didn't feel nervous. I felt hollowed out, purposeful. I showered and put on a simple black dress, not for a wedding, but for a funeral. The funeral of the idea that my family could ever be what I needed them to be. I didn't go to the ceremony. My part was for the reception. I waited until I knew the vows would have been exchanged, the rice thrown, the pictures taken. I drove to the country club, my car, a stark contrast to the BMWs and Audis filling the parking lot. I walked into the grand lobby, my heart beating a slow, steady rhythm. I could hear the muffled sounds of chatter and clinking glasses from the main ballroom. A young man with a clipboard and a stressed expression was directing staff. He had a name tag that read, Gregory, Event Coordinator. He was perfect. I walked up to him with a warm, slightly frantic smile. "Excuse me, hi," I said, my voice pitched with the manufactured stress of a forgetful wedding guest. "I'm so sorry to bother you. I'm Danielle, a friend of Megan's from college. She's going to kill me. I completely forgot to give this to the DJ." I held up the small black USB drive. Gregory looked at it, then at me, his eyes tired. "What is it?" "It's just some extra photos for the slideshow," I said breezily. "Some old college pictures she really wanted in there. Her phone is off, obviously, and I couldn't get a hold of Paul. Could you possibly make sure the DJ gets this? He's supposed to play it during dinner." His expression didn't change. This was probably the 10th minor crisis he'd dealt with in the last hour. "Yeah, okay. DJ is Scott, right?" "That's the one," I confirmed with a grateful smile. "Thank you so much. You're a lifesaver." I handed him the USB drive. He took it without a second glance and tucked it into the front pocket of his vest. "No problem," he muttered, already turning to shout at a waiter about champagne flutes. And that was it. The package was delivered. I turned and walked out of the lobby, the cold evening air hitting my face. I didn't look back. I got into my car and started the engine. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I could hear the DJ's voice booming from the ballroom, introducing the happy couple for the first time. The applause was deafening. I drove away, the sound fading behind me, and I just kept driving. The trap was set. All I had to do now was wait for it to spring. I drove for about 20 minutes, the city lights blurring into long streaks of color. I had no destination in mind, just a need to put distance between me and that country club. My phone had been silent in the cup holder, but as I stopped at a red light, it lit up. Then it buzzed. Then it lit up and buzzed again, and again, like a frantic firefly trapped in a jar. A cascade of notifications. Texts, missed calls, social media tags. The light turned green. I ignored it. The car behind me honked. I pulled over to the side of the road, my hand steady on the wheel. The buzzing didn't stop. I picked up the phone. 37 missed calls. Most were from my Aunt Carol. Several were from my brother Paul. But the call that was coming through right now, the one I decided to answer, was from Chloe. I pressed the green icon and put the phone on speaker. Before I could say a word, her voice, shrill and shaking with rage, filled my car. "You monster!" she shrieked. "You absolute evil monster, Hannah. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I stayed silent, letting her burn herself out. "We were watching the slideshow," she sobbed, her words punctuated by angry gasps. "It was beautiful. Pictures of Paul as a baby, Megan in her little dance recitals. Everyone was crying happy tears. And then the screen went black. I could picture it perfectly. The dim lights of the ballroom, the soft music, the clinking of champagne glasses. This title came up," Chloe continued, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "A few thoughts from the groom. Everyone thought it was part of the presentation. Maybe a sweet message from Paul to Megan." I waited. This was the part I wanted to hear. And then they appeared. Your screenshots. His messages to you, one after another. "I wish I was marrying someone with a backbone like yours." "Megan's mom is trying to turn her into a clone of herself. Sometimes I think this wedding is more for them than for us. They call you ghetto, but at least you're real. I'm so sick of all this fakeness." A thick, satisfying silence hummed over the line for a moment. I could hear muffled chaos in the background of her call. Shouting, someone crying loudly. "The last one was the worst," Chloe choked out. "The one about Megan. She's a sweet girl, but she just does whatever her parents say. I don't know if that's enough for a lifetime. It just stayed on the screen. Hannah, it just hung there for everyone to see." "What happened then?" I asked, my voice even and calm. What happened? She screamed. Megan started sobbing, a horrible, ugly sound. She threw her champagne glass at the screen. Paul just stood there, white as a ghost. He tried to get Scott to turn it off, but the DJ was just staring with his mouth open like everyone else. Your Aunt Carol was screaming about security. People were just leaving. They were grabbing their coats and just walking out without saying a word. You ruined it. You ruined everything. I listened to her accusations. Evil. A monster. Maybe they were right. But I didn't feel evil. I didn't feel like a monster. I felt nothing. A quiet, clean emptiness. The space that's left after you finally take out the trash that's been stinking up your house for years. She was supposed to be your sister, Chloe whispered, her anger spent, replaced by a note of disbelief. She was, I replied softly. And Paul was supposed to be my brother. And Carol was supposed to be my aunt. You were all supposed to be my family. You decided I wasn't good enough to be part of it. I just decided to agree with you. I ended the call before she could respond. I blocked her number. Then I blocked Carol's. I scrolled through the text messages without reading them. Just a long list of angry, pleading, hateful words. I saw one from Paul that just said, I deserved that. I'm sorry. I deleted it without replying. I put the phone down, face down in the passenger seat. The buzzing stopped. I looked out my windshield at the dark road ahead. The funeral was over. I had mourned the loss of a family I thought I had, and I had buried the hope that they would ever change. They wanted a life with no drama, just joy. I had simply shown them that their perfect joy was built on a foundation of drama they just preferred to ignore. I put the car in drive and pulled back onto the street. I still didn't have a destination, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally heading in the right direction. I was free. From being banned to showing them their perfect joy was built on ignored drama. I finally took out the trash that stunk up my family for years. What did you think of my decision? Subscribe for more intense stories like this.